The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Someone with leprosy came up to Jesus and kneeling down begged him and said, "If you wish, you can make me clean." So moved with pity, he stretched out his hand, touched him and said to him, "I will do it. Be made clean." The leprosy left him immediately and he was made clean. Then, warning him sternly, he dismissed him at once. He said to him, "See that you tell no one anything, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses prescribed. That will be proof for them." The man went away and began to publicize the whole matter. He spread the report abroad so that it was impossible for Jesus to enter a town openly. He remained outside in deserted places, and people kept coming to him from everywhere. The Gospel of the Lord. If you want, you can make me clean. If you wish and want it, Lord. Well, we're looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for love in too many faces. It's an old country song, I think released in the early 80s, sung by a country singer, Johnny Lee. I don't know that Johnny Lee had that many known songs. I don't know how well known he is. The song got kind of a life of its own on the charts because of its being included in the movie Urban Cowboy with John Travolta. And those of you alive in the early 80s know John Travolta was a big deal back then. But looking for love, I feel like this week I've been thinking about where it is we find love, not so much as we're looking for it in the wrong places, but that we need to be open to finding it in the unlikely places. Because I think I've discovered that a little bit as we go into this Lenten season on Wednesday. I'm all the more conscious of maybe my Lent needs to be more about seeking out that which is of love, which is expressing something that is beautiful and good in a world that at times can generate and seem to be too quick to create what might be ugly. In a world created by a generous and incredible creator God who made all things good, but we tend to mess them up a little bit, huh? This week was a tough week for me in the sense that I spent a lot of time going to funerals, especially for our alumni here at St. Joseph's University, alumni from ages 39, 43, 72, 90, pretty wide range of people who have passed away. It's not a particularly deeply sad thing when people have made it into their 90s and they've had relatively good health. In fact, those become more like celebrations of life. But when we bury young people, especially young parents or people who are early on in their life with lots of dreams and aspirations for the future, we see and feel like we've been robbed a little bit and that they've been robbed and we've been robbed because we won't have them around in the same way. In some of these cases, there was real prayers for a miracle, wanting a miracle, the kind of cure that we see in today's gospel, where, Lord, if you want it, you can make all this different, right? And of course, the miracle didn't come. Lots of ways in which we look for those miracles. I really, really appreciate the desire for a miracle. I get a little nervous when we look for miracles in certain ways within our Catholic tradition that get a little transactional with God. If we do this and that and this, then you'll give us the miracle, right? And I hope I'm the one that you give it to, Lord, as opposed to a transaction with somebody else who might not get that miracle. I really get nervous about that because I don't think that's the way, in fact, that we need to approach God, nor do I think it sort of bespeaks of our own capacity to negotiate with God. But as I'm often reminded, God is God and we're not. And so I think there's a way in which, for me, that desire for a miracle is what I really focused on, because I do think it's out of incredible love, obviously. This man in today's gospel literally begs Jesus for a cure. And he's then able to go back and become a regular member of society. He's no longer ostracized because of his illness. He's able to restore his relationships. And so much so that in his exuberance, he doesn't do what Jesus advises him. He can't but tell everybody what has been done for him. In that way, he's wanting to share what was an act of love, what is an act of hope. For you and for me, I do wonder if we can look at the ways in which love is importantly coming at us, but in really unlikely and places. Unfortunately, we live in a country right now where there's lots of people stoking fear and hate. I see this all the time, and it really, really gets to me, I have to admit. And so rather than trying to combat it in like form, which of course pulls me in, pulls me down, I really do think that you and I, going into this Lenten season, maybe we, like this man in today's gospel, just need to ask the Lord for some kind of a healing, to be made clean. But to do that by seeking out what God is already offering you and me by way of something that is beautiful and good in the world. Not to ignore the problems, I'm not saying that. But there's a way in which we almost have to point to the goodness and the beauty in the world in order to overcome what might be ugliness and fearful kinds of discourses. There are real fears, believe me. I'm all about being a realist. But I do know that that right now we live in a world where all kinds of ignorance is abundant and unfounded fears are rampant. And it all looks pretty ugly because it's usually generated to pit us against each other. So I think going into this Lenten season, I might want to consider how it is. I'm looking for those signs of love because I could see it in today's reading and I could see it in this week's funerals that I attended. Life experiences of people where love really came through in strong ways, especially those who struggled with illness. And that love is eternal. I mean, if there's any consolation when we bury a loved one, is that it hurts so bad that we know that there's this love that binds us to each other, and it's part of something more than ourselves and even more than the world that we know. It's eternal. It's part of that love which is God. And we all of a sudden come to know it in a deep and important way when one of our loved ones dies. We need to take greater stock in that eternal love that we experience with each other and to magnify it, to focus on it and to build off of it and let it become for us the energy that moves us forward. So friends, as we maybe look for a way in which we can be healed, in which we can maybe see how we can have God's will and desire for us to be living cleaner and better and healthier and holier lives, let us not be afraid to go into this Lenten season looking for love in maybe all the unlikely places, in every face, in every encounter, and allow ourselves then to come to know more deeply how it is that God is calling us to that love, to live it, to magnify it, to replicate it, to celebrate it, so much so that it can't be contained within us. Amen.